Act 7. The Master Stroke. 3 days after D-Day, with Allied forces fighting in Normandy, the German command is debating, should we send our reserve forces to Normandy? Should we commit everything? June 9th, GARBO sends the most important message of the war. It's long, it's detailed, it's angry. He writes that he's risked everything to provide intelligence, but it's not being taken seriously. He says his agents are reporting the real invasion hasn't happened yet. Normandy is a diversion. The main invasion, a much larger force under Patton, is still coming at Calais. He provides troop numbers, division names, timing predictions, and then he does something genius. He throws a fit. He writes that he's considering stopping his work because he's not being appreciated. The Germans panic. They send a message back immediately. Your work is of the highest importance. Continue at all costs. We trust your intelligence completely. And then they make the decision that probably changed the war. Hitler keeps his best divisions waiting at Calais, waiting for an invasion that will never come. For 7 weeks after D-Day, German forces that could have destroyed the Normandy beachhead sat 150 miles away because they believed GARBO's Phantom Army was coming. Historians estimate this deception saved tens of thousands of Allied lives. One man, sitting in London, writing letters about people who didn't exist. Act 8. The Medals. The Germans were so impressed with GARBO that in July 1944, they awarded him the Iron Cross, one of Germany's highest military honors. He never went to pick it up, obviously. His handler received it on his behalf through intermediaries. But here's the insane part. After the war, King George VI awarded Juan the Member of the Order of the British Empire, MBE. Juan Pujol Garcia remains one of the only people, possibly the only person, to receive military honors from both sides of World War II. Think about that. The Nazis gave him a medal for his excellent work. The British gave him a medal for lying to the Nazis about that excellent work. Act 9. The Disappearance. After the war, Juan had a problem. He'd made a lot of Nazis look very stupid. Former German intelligence officers were being arrested, tried, maybe talking. His name might come up. MI5 was worried someone might want revenge. So in 1949, Juan Pujol Garcia faked his own death. According to official records, he died of malaria in Angola. He actually moved to Venezuela and lived a quiet life, running a bookstore and later a gift shop. For nearly 40 years, the world thought he was dead. His own family thought he was dead. Historians knew about GARBO, but they didn't know his real name or if he'd survived the war. Act 10. The Rediscovery. A British writer named Nigel West is researching double agents. He becomes obsessed with finding out what happened to GARBO. He tracks down clues, he follows leads, and eventually he finds Juan alive in his 70s, running a small shop in Caracas, Venezuela. He'd been living under his real name the whole time. He just never told anyone what he had done. When West found him, he was hesitant, but eventually he agreed to tell his story. In 1984, Juan was invited back to England. The British government officially recognized him. He met with the Duke of Edinburgh. He visited Normandy for the 40th anniversary of D-Day. Can you imagine standing on those beaches, knowing that your invented people, your Phantom Army, your carefully crafted lies saved thousands of lives on that exact sand? Juan gave some interviews. He was humble, almost confused by the attention. He said, "I just did what I thought was right." Act 11. The Legacy. Juan Pujol Garcia died in 1988 in Venezuela, this time for real. But his story lives as possibly the greatest espionage operation in history. Think about what he did. No military training, no intelligence background, just a chicken farmer who hated fascism and had an incredible imagination. He invented 27 people so convincing that the German high command trusted them more than their own generals. He created detailed lives, relationships, conflicts, expenses, illnesses, pregnancies, personality flaws. He maintained this web of lies for years without a single major slip-up. And his fake army, his ghost network, influenced one of the most important military decisions of the 20th century. There's something almost beautiful about it. The greatest weapon wasn't a bomb or a tank. It was a story so well told that it bent reality. Epilogue: why it worked. So why did it work? Why didn't the Germans ever catch on? First, Juan understood human nature. He didn't create perfect agents. He created flawed, believable people. People who got drunk, got sick, complained, made mistakes. Second, he told the Germans what they wanted to hear. Hitler was obsessed with the idea of a Calais invasion. It made strategic sense. GARBO's intelligence confirmed their existing beliefs. Third, he played the long game. He spent years building credibility with small, verifiable truths mixed with strategic lies. By the time D-Day came, he'd earned absolute trust. And finally, he was lucky. There were moments, currency mistakes, geographical errors, where he could have been exposed, but the Germans wanted to believe, so they overlooked the red flag. And finally, he had help. Juan Harris, his MI5 handler, was brilliant. The entire MI5 double-cross system supported him. But at the center of it all was Juan, the storyteller, the actor, the man who convinced the world that shadows were real. Final thoughts. In a war of tanks, planes, and atomic bombs, one man's greatest weapon was imagination. Juan Pujol Garcia wasn't a soldier. He was a storyteller, and his story saved thousands of lives. The next time someone tells you that words don't matter, that stories aren't powerful, remember GARBO. Remember the phantom spy network that never existed, but changed the world.
Act 2, The Fake Nazi Spy. Juan went to the German embassy. He told them he was a Spanish government official who traveled frequently. He said he had contacts, access, motivation. He wanted to spy for Germany. And here's the thing, he was convincing. The Germans said yes. They gave him invisible ink. They gave him a code name, Alaric. They gave him an address in Lisbon to send reports. And they told him to go to England and start spying. There was just one problem. Juan couldn't get into England. He had no visa, no reason to go, no way in. So he did what would become his signature move. He lied brilliantly. Juan went to Lisbon, Portugal instead. And from a public library in Lisbon, using tourist guides, magazines, and a British railway timetable, he started inventing reports about England, a country he had never visited. He wrote to the Germans, "I have arrived in England. I am recruiting sub-agents." He described Liverpool's docks, except he used the tourist guide, which was outdated, and he reported ships that had been sunk months ago. He described British money, but he got the currency wrong because he'd never actually held pounds. He talked about Glaswegians and their love of wine. Anyone who knows Scotland knows they're more whiskey people, but Juan didn't know that. His reports were hilariously wrong. But here's the miracle. The Germans believed him anyway. They were so eager for intelligence from England, they overlooked the mistakes. For months, Juan sat in Lisbon, inventing spy reports, creating fictional sub-agents, building an entire fantasy network. And then he went back to the British. Act 3. Finally, the British listen. Early 1942, Juan contacts British intelligence again, but this time he has proof. Actual letters from the Germans, actual codes, actual communication channels. The British intercept his letters through their code-breaking operations. They realize, wait, the Germans have a spy in England, except we know they don't because we control all their agents. So, who is this? When they figure out it's some Spanish guy making it all up from Portugal, they're stunned. MI5 brings Juan to England, finally, and they give him a choice. Stop or work for us properly. Juan's answer is, I didn't do all this to stop now. They codename him GARBO because he was the greatest actor of the war. Act 4. Building the Phantom Network. Now the real genius begins. Juan, with his MI5 handler, Tomas Harris, starts systematically building his fake spy network. But they don't just add a few agents. They go full method. They create 27 sub-agents. each with complete backstories, personalities, motivations, and writing styles. Let me introduce you to some of them. Agent 1 was a Portuguese traveling salesman living in Newport. He recruited most of the other agents. Agent 2 was a Swiss-German businessman in Bootle, near Liverpool. Agent 3 was a Venezuelan student in Glasgow who really hated the British. But then it gets weird. They created sub-agents of the sub-agents. Agent 3.1 was Agent 3's Greek friend. Agent 3.2 was a Scottish nationalist. Agent 3.3 was a very dissolute soldier willing to spy for money and women. They created an entire widows network. Agent 5 was a brother who died, and his widow took over his spying work, except neither existed. Agent 7 was a retired seaman running a network in sailors' communities. Juan would write different reports in different handwriting styles, different tones, different English skill levels. The Venezuelan student wrote poor English with Spanish influences. The Swiss businessman wrote formal, correct, German-influenced English. Some agents were indiscreet and needed to be controlled. Others were reliable but lazy. Others were enthusiastic but drew too much attention. The Germans were managing, in their minds, a complex network of human personalities. They were all shadows. Act 5, the everyday deception. Running this operation wasn't just about big lies. It was about 1,000 small details. When Agent 4's wife got pregnant, Juan had to write about morning sickness, doctor visits, time off from spying duties. When Agent 7 got sick, there were medical updates, concerns about his network falling apart, scrambling to keep things running. When one agent spent too much money on wine and women, the Germans sent letters scolding him about being careful. Juan and his team had to remember birthdays, personal grudges between agents, who recruited whom, who trusted whom. They created business expense reports, travel schedules. One agent even filed complaints about another agent's unreliability. The Germans never suspected, because who would invent a spy who underperforms? But here's the really clever part. Through these flawed agents, the British could feed Germany exactly what they wanted them to believe. Not perfect intelligence, messy, human, believable intelligence. And it was all building to one moment. Act 6. Fortitude. The deception for D-Day. The Allies are planning the largest invasion in history, D-Day, landing at Normandy. But if the Germans know they're coming at Normandy, they'll concentrate their forces there. Thousands more Allied soldiers will die. The invasion might fail. So they create Operation Fortitude, a massive deception to make Hitler think the invasion is coming at Calais, 150 miles away. GARBO becomes the centerpiece. His network starts reporting huge army buildups in southeast England, across from Calais. They report American General Patton commanding this force. They report endless equipment, divisions, preparations. Most of this was fake. Inflatable tanks, dummy aircraft, radio chatter from non-existent units. But the Germans believed him because GARBO said so. He'd been reliable for years. His network had given them good intelligence. They trusted him. Here's where John does something absolutely brilliant. June 6th, 1944, D-Day begins. The Allies land at Normandy. Juan sends an urgent message to Germany. Alerted by Agent 4, large-scale movements detected towards Normandy. This appears to be the invasion. He sends it at 3 a.m. But here's the trick. He'd coordinated with MI5 to ensure his German handler was asleep. The message doesn't get decoded until 8 a.m., hours after the landing started. Why does this matter? Because when the handler wakes up and sees the message, he thinks, oh, GARBO tried to warn us. He knew, but we missed it. GARBO's credibility goes through the roof. Picture this. It's 1944. Hitler's high command is gathered around a table, studying intelligence reports. They're convinced the Allied invasion will hit Calais, not Normandy. They're so certain, they keep their best divisions waiting. In the wrong place. And the reason? One man, a Spanish chicken farmer who couldn't even speak English properly. A man who created an entire network of spies that never existed. A man both sides of the war wanted to give medals to. This is the story of the greatest double agent in history, and it starts with rejection. Act 1. The nobody who wanted to matter. Juan Pujol Garcia was nobody special. Born in Barcelona in 1912, he was just another guy trying to survive in chaotic 1930s Spain. He worked boring jobs: hotel manager, chicken farmer, cinema manager. Nothing screamed master spy, but Juan had something burning inside him. He hated fascism. He'd seen what the Spanish Civil War did to his country. He watched the Nazis rise in Germany, and he decided, this ordinary man decided, he was going to do something about it. Here's where it gets interesting. Juan went to the British Embassy in Madrid in 1941. He said, "I want to be a spy for you." They laughed him out of the building. He tried again, rejected. He tried a third time, still rejected. Now, most people would give up, but not Juan. He did something absolutely insane. He thought, if the British won't let me spy for them, I'll spy for the Germans first. Then I'll have something to offer. Let that sink in. This man, with zero training, zero connections, decided to infiltrate Nazi intelligence as a resume builder.